Hey, with you evening story channel, I post new interesting stories every day. Subscribe and click the bell to not miss it.
Maria's family life can hardly be called happy, but it started out like a fairy tale. She met Alex quite by chance in the subway. The woman was on her way home after working as a doctor and obstetrician at the local hospital. Entering the carriage, she found that there were no free seats, so she got tired, wandered to the door, leaned against the door, closed her eyes. Even the dimmed light that was in the wagon blinded her. Her head was telling. It seemed that a little more her legs would not stand and she would fall. Maria worked in the maternity ward. The duty that night proved to be difficult. 6 laboring women were brought to them at the same time, as the woman was on duty and the only doctor. At that point, she had to deliver all of them alone. It was only towards morning that she managed to sit down for a while. The doctor who came to take over found her half asleep. "Maria Sergeyevna, go home, get some rest." She woke up, but he didn't want to leave. She barely made it to the subway. She hoped that she would be able to take a nap there, but her hopes were not realized. Suddenly she felt someone stirring her. "Why don't you sit down? I'm afraid you might fall down when the train slows down before the next station." Maria opened her eyes tiredly. A handsome young man stood beside her and pointed to a vacant seat. "Sit down." The woman looked gratefully at the stranger, slowly lowered herself into the seat. "Thank you very much." She was instantly sleepy. Maria was not worried about passing her stop, because she lived at the final station. She had a whole 25 minutes to doze off. Already at home, she remembered the man who had done such a noble thing to her. There were still men left in this world, more gentlemen, Maria thought. But soon she forgot all about what had happened. Domestic problems absorbed her completely. A few days later, she was back on the night shift. What was my surprise when she met that stranger again? He smiled at her, said, "I'm holding a seat for you. Have a seat." Maria smiled back, "Thank you." The situation repeated itself several times. One day, a man managed to sit next to Maria. A conversation started between them. Before leaving, Alex so introduced himself, the man offered to exchange phone numbers. He called the same day and invited the woman for coffee. Maria was over the moon. She liked the stranger even at the first meeting. In the evening, they sat in the cafe. Milo communicated. The woman learned a lot of interesting things about her interlocutor. Alex was very surprised to learn that Maria works in the maternity ward. "So you help people to be born?" He laughed. "You have a very good and necessary profession. I like it." Before saying goodbye, Alex invited the woman to a real date in a restaurant. Their meetings became frequent. Soon they grew into something more. Young people began to meet, then moved in together. A year later, the man made an offer. Naturally, Maria agreed. The first year of marriage went wonderfully. The man was still as courteous and charming. But then it was as if he'd been replaced. Alex became irritable. He often broke down into shouting. His wife couldn't understand the reason for this change, and the husband did not explain anything. Soon Alex became fond of cars and often disappeared in the evenings. Maria was worried. Finally, she decided to have a serious talk with him. "Alex, what's going on with you? Why did you distance yourself from me? Could you fall out of love so quickly?" But the heart-to-heart talk didn't work. The question about his wife only made the man mad. He snapped. "Why do I have to answer to you? I'm a grown man. I do what I want." Maria sighed and forgave his absence for the 1,000th time. After a while, things seemed to get better. Alex again became smiling, cheerful, the way his wife loved him. Maria was happy. Finally, her Alex was back to his old self. He began to spend more and more time at home. It seemed that life was getting better, but the ideal did not last long. Soon the man learned that he inherited a garage. His grandfather died and bequeathed the building to his grandson, knowing his love for cars. Alex began to disappear in the evenings again. Sometimes at night he started not getting enough sleep, snapping at his wife and friends. The latter quickly turned their backs on him. Maria wanted to go and see what her husband was doing in the garage, that it takes from him so much strength and energy. But the man was adamantly opposed. "Do not go into my garage. I forbid you. As long as I'm alive, no woman will enter there." These words very surprised the wife, but at the same time refuted her suspicions that her husband was cheating on her. Once again, the woman had to put up with her husband's absence from her side. So several years passed. The relationship was never going to work out. Maria even started taking extra shifts at work to spend as little time at home as possible. She often went down to the ward with abandoned children, fed and entertained them. The woman dreamed of having a child of her own, but was afraid to tell her husband about it. She thought that this topic would cause him nothing but irritation. A few days later, Alex came home earlier than usual, in a very high spirits. "Maria, let's go to a restaurant tonight." The proposal was a complete surprise for the woman. She instantly agreed. She hoped that it would help them to get closer again. The whole evening, the man was cheerful, joking, and complimenting her. Maria decided that it was the right moment to talk to him about the children. To her great surprise, Alex took the idea very well. "I also dream about children. I want a daughter as beautiful as you. I want you to hold her gently." My wife just couldn't believe her luck. We decided to conceive at the wrong time. We started the same night. The next few weeks were wonderful. The man never left his wife for a minute, almost carried her in his arms. The day Maria found out she was pregnant, everything changed again. Alex went to the garage again. He came back a few days later. He'd never been gone so long before. All these days, the woman cried, worried. Did something happen to her husband? She wanted to go to the garage, despite the prohibition of her husband. But she caught herself thinking that she didn't even know where he was. She only had to wait and believe that Lesha was fine. The man returned a few days later, exhausted with black circles under his eyes. Hungry Maria immediately sat him down at the table, poured a bowl of flavored soup. Sitting down across from him, she watched him eat greedily. There's definitely something wrong with him, thought the spouse. That also exhausted him. She tried to talk to her husband gently. "Alex, my love, haven't you eaten anything all these days?" Taking another bite of hot soup, the man shook his head. "But you can't do that," concerned said Maria. "You won't last that long, will you? Why don't you tell me what's going on with you? I'm worried." The man put the spoon in his mouth, looked at his wife. "Thank you. It was delicious." Then he got up, went to the bedroom, and went to sleep. The woman was desperate. There was no trace of the old Alex. How could she tell him the good news? Suddenly, he would not be happy at all. Maria hardly waited until her husband woke up. "Alex, we did it. Yeah, I'm pregnant." Seeing the man's reaction, she sighed with relief. He was overjoyed. "That's great news. It should be celebrated by quickly running out to the store for champagne frozen for you." Alex kissed his wife happy, ran to go shopping. Maria even then wondered why the spouse was going to buy treats. After all, he was fired from his job 2 months ago because of his endless absenteeism. She wanted to shout, but he was already gone, and the phone, as luck would have it, was still lying on the nightstand in the hallway. Well, if he went out, he must have had money. Maybe he found a part-time job, the woman thought. She decided to wait for Alex and ask him about everything. Half an hour passed. 2 hours later, the man still hadn't come home. Maria cried all night. She fell asleep. Only in the morning, she was awakened by a terrible call. It was an unspecified number. When the woman answered, all I heard was someone breathing. "Well, speak up, I can't hear you." Maria got nervous. What kind of joke is this really? She hung up, but the calls were repeated again. Several times the woman tried to shout to the caller, but in vain. Then she just stopped answering the phone. She could have turned off the phone altogether, but then Alex would call, and she'd be out of range. Hours after 6, finally the call stopped. Maria breathed a sigh of relief, but this, as it turned out, was not the end. After midnight, there was another call. The woman didn't realize where the sound was coming from. Then she realized that it was the front doorbell. Maybe it was Alex who had lost his keys, she thought. But just in case, before opening the door, she looked through the peephole. There was no one there. Are school children playing around? Tired, the woman thought. Shaved back to bed. The night passed quietly. But at 8 o'clock the doorbell rang again. Maria even jumped from surprise, almost released a cup of coffee. This time she did not look through the peephole, but opened it at once. But there was no one there again. The woman went out into the entrance, looked up and down the stairwell, but did not notice anything suspicious. "Artem, if it's you who is pranking, then I'll have to talk to your parents." Just in case, I shouted into the void. The subject was a neighbor boy about 14 years old. Like all children of his age was with unruly. The residents of the house often complained about his behavior, but Maria had never once had to deal with his antics. She didn't know why. I guess now it was her turn. She got really angry. She went back into the apartment. The calls didn't stop. All day into the evening, the woman was so agitated that she wanted to lie down and cry, but she decided to keep herself in control. "I'd better go for a walk. The fresh air calms me down," she said to herself. She went to the park, where she and her husband liked to walk. A wave of memories swept over her head. Suddenly, I noticed a crowd of people at one of the benches. It got someone surrounded. Apparently, someone was sick. Maria hurried over there. Even though she is an obstetrician, but still a doctor can give first aid. With every step, her feet rocked, or there lay a man in a red jacket, exactly the same as Alex's. It was the one she had been wearing on her husband the day he left the house. Maria was 100% sure that it was his jacket. After all, she bought it herself. The woman prayed that it was not him, someone else just in his jacket, but her pleas were not answered. On the bench, Alex lay badly beaten. His face was a mess, his mouth a thin trickle of blood. The man was unconscious. Maria rushed over to him and got someone to call an ambulance. "He needs to go to the hospital immediately." 5 minutes later, the ambulance started the man into intensive care. Maria sat next to him, squeezing his hand. "Alex, hold on, you have to get better. You can't leave me and our baby." Tears rolled from her eyes. The woman walked her husband all the way to the emergency room. She was not allowed to go any further. The hours of waiting dragged on. The operation lasted more than 6 hours. The doctor came out, looked sadly at her. "Unfortunately, we were unable to save your husband. His injuries had caused internal bleeding. He lost a lot of blood. We're very sorry." Maria slowly slid down the wall. A silent cry froze on her lips. How could this be? How is it possible? Just yesterday, Alex was alive, making plans for the future, happy to be a father. The next few days were a blur. Neither she nor the man had any relatives, so we had to handle all the organizational issues on our own. It's even better. It was a distraction from the tragedy. A month passed, a month of pain and despair. Maria was still walking around as pale as the wall. The doctor who managed her pregnancy scolded her. "Maria, I'm very sorry for your loss, but you need to think about the baby now. And to do that, first of all, you have to take care of yourself. I'm asking you very much, eat more vitamins. Try to be less nervous and anxious." The woman tried to listen to his recommendations. After all, the future baby was all she had left. At that moment, it was time to draw up the documents for inheritance. Then, for the first time, Maria remembered the ill-fated garage. She decided to get rid of it as soon as possible. She believed that it was the culprit of all their troubles. She got the address from her husband's documents. She was going to go and see that there for all the years and never been there. But now, she didn't care about her husband's prohibition to go there. The garage was on the other side of town. It was pretty hard to find, but Maria didn't think of backing out. Finally, she stood in front of the metal door. For a long time, she did not dare to open it, but she did it anyway. When she saw what was inside, she was stunned. The whole garage was filled with computers. On the walls hung some graphs tables. Maria started to study everything, and then suddenly it came to her. Her Alex was in huge arranged in the garage's own computer club, and played from several servers at once. The woman noticed a video camera standing off to the side. Maybe there's something important there, Maria thought. There was a single video on it depicted. Alex tortured, tired. "Maria, if you can, forgive me. I became addicted. I couldn't live a day without betting. I know I've caused so much pain. But I'll get better, I promise. When I found out we were having a baby, I was the happiest man in the world. I decided to end my addiction. I can't get out of the gambling business that easily, but I'm gonna do my best. Today I told them I was quitting, but they started threatening me. I'd owe a small amount of money, I promise. I'll take care of that too. We'll be a perfect family again. You and me and our baby." What if a man told someone what you were doing here? "I told you I'd pay you back what I owe you." At this point, the video cut off. Maria screamed in despair. Everything made sense to her now. Her husband's secrecy, his alienation, his constant absence from home. It was all because of his gambling addiction. She had no idea. Maybe she could have helped him, but it was too late. His gambling addiction had robbed him of his family's entire future and the most important thing in life. Maria slowly walked out of the garage. Inside, everything was already on fire. We need to burn this place down so that no trace of it remains. The woman was very hard from what she had learned, but she needed to be strong. After all, she carries a baby under her heart for his sake. She must live and forget about the past, no matter how difficult it may be.